Hey, how's it going? I am Lazy Dude. I'm joined, of course, by my brother Chris.
Hi, I'm Chrisfilmbaker, and I'm happy to be here. We're here to bring you the top six most impactful or most amazing,
Influential films that have left a really big impact on your life,
yeah, films that changed my life.
basically. And so, it is a different type of list. Is you won't find this on Watch Mojo. You won't find this on the typical thing. So we're here to bring you some personal movies that gave us some real personal stakes or changes or emotions in our life. And so that is what we're gonna do today. So let's waste no time. Let's dive right into it. Started off with me, I put, The Incredibles on this list. It's a very fun movie, one of my favorite superhero movies, but, the reason I put this one up there for me for a movie that changed my life or changed, my perception, this was the first time I really, like, took a look at a movie's, like, quality. I remember I was sitting in I wasn't sitting, I was it was after church, and I was talking with some friends, and we had seen The Incredibles over the weekend, and some people said, "Oh, how was it?" They wanna know how it was, and I was like, "Well, it's not funnier than Monsters Incorporated, but it's better." And that one little thought was a thing that is like, okay, humor and giggles and having a fun little time is not all that there is to a movie. There is a lot more of the, depth of the story and the inner meaning and the inner turmoil that the characters are going through. And so for me, I was just like, this is a movie that it got me thinking about how to approach movies and I always love the details of it, and how the movie just really, um, it's thought through its world, like, what would happen superheroes? There would be lawsuits, there would be people who felt inferior, and much like today's society where if anyone's smart or good or at anything that people really felt inferior, and so we wanna dumb down everyone so nobody feels special anymore, and, another word for everyone's special is nobody is special. And I don't know, it was a movie that really, changed my whole thinking on animated movies and movies in general, and so that's why it's on my list.
Yeah, it really does feel like family when you watch it. You do feel a little more connected with your family. So personally, it does impact um, you watching it together. And just like a Disney movie is supposed to do, this is the way it brings you together, and just the the strength of the characters and everything. Yeah,
Mhm.
my first one I want to talk about is a film that influenced me in an amazing way, but in an amazing scary way. Obviously, we all know there's a lot of horror films out there that have a cover that's scary. And sure,
Mhm.
you might even look at Child Play or Child Play 2 and look at those kind of,
Hellraiser, that one that
yeah,
one always creeped me out.
eh, grimacing covers. There's lots of them. But as a 12-year-old boy, I didn't really care for those. I just kind of like, okay, I see it and that's it. It didn't leave anything with me. This is a movie that influenced my life so much that I didn't even go to a video rental store at one point, or I would stay behind the counter and not look out towards the videos. I hadn't even seen the movie, guys. I had not even seen the movie, and I know for a fact I'm not the only one that had this problem. Countless families and kids had this problem, and we all know the film we're talking about.
I don't think
If you've seen the cover, you know it. Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey. They had death in there, and his makeup on his face is lit up just the right way that it really it triggered the brain like that's not right, like that's uncomfortable for me. And as a kid, I don't know if I was how I assumed that I was 12, but it lingered on till I was 17 or 16.
Yeah, you were there was a time where Chris would be
It
like, "All
just
right, Kenneth, here's some movies. We're gonna see if they have. You're gonna go in, you're gonna find them, and I'm just gonna sit here in the car." And so I'd go in the movie rental store and have to find all the ones. And Chris would hype up this cover so much of how evil it was, and I was worried that I was gonna find it and lose my soul or something. And, like, by the time I did, I was like, "That's it?" But, like, cause I don't know if this is a problem that, like, families were running away from Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey because of it. Like, don't get me wrong, I think that some kids were like, and also, I'm not one to judge. Like, I was scared of the Annie. Remember that? When we were at a friend's house and, like, the Annie cover and that kid with the red hair creeped me out. I don't know, there's something scary
um
about it. So
well, I won't go into too much detail, but there's something to be said with a smile,
mhm.
like on a cover. Um, some people, a lot of kids, just will be creeped out about that, and I think I stumbled across it when I was 12ish. I didn't know it was in the bees. I didn't have time to check out the title. I just knew I had to get out of there. I didn't want to see it
Mhm.
again. And so every time it caught me, I'd be in movie gallery and just going through. Oh, there's Bicentennial Man. Oh no, Bill is dead. Bogus Journey.
Yeah,
And it was
yeah,
staring at me in the face. That smile. Anyways, I did finally see the movie when I was older. I had to see it because I saw Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, and then
right.
I wanted to follow up and see it. And I was like, as far as sequels go, it did its job. It wasn't a flop in my mind. It was not as nearly as good, but yeah, it's interesting. Though as I was watching, I was like, man, the cover got this character so wrong. I really feel for
Mhm.
this character, you know. And it's just interesting that the cover can be a certain way, and then you actually meet the character by watching the film, and you realize he's like a teddy bear, right?
Alright, next movie on my list for a movie that really impacted, me in my life was, The Chronicles of Narnia: The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. I don't think I've ever been more hyped for a movie
Hyped.
in my entire life, except for maybe a different movie that's gonna be on this list later, but it was like,
You and our
I
sister.
this Yeah, like, we would put in Herbie Fully Loaded over and over and over again, not to watch that movie sucks, but so we could watch the trailer 'cause it was on there for The Chronicles of Narnia: The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. This was, like, before I was into the internet all the time because we didn't have internet at the farm growing up, and so, like, I was in the movie theater and the trailer comes on, even the trailer, and they just walk in and he says like, "Mr. Mrs. McCready," and she's like, "I'm afraid so." I was like, "Why do I know Mrs. McCready? I know that name." And then the trailer continues, I'm like, "Wait a minute, wait a minute, wait a minute, wait a minute, wait a minute." And then it's like it's flipping Narnia, and this was the first time I ever had a movie that was of a property that, technically, I've never read The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. I've read every other Narnia book. I've never read Lion, Witch, and Wardrobe, but I know each and every inch of that story. I've listened to different audiobooks. I've seen every movie, even the ones where, like, they had adults in beaver suits going like, like, even I've seen those. I know that story by heart. I could tell I could tell a child that from off my heart, every little beat and detail. So it was like this was the first time there was a movie that I of a story that I knew that was being adapted, and it wasn't just adapted into this silly little thing. This was a movie that had a budget behind it. That had like video effects. This was like how people who probably read Lord of the Rings felt when it was adapted. That was what the feeling was like for me, and I remember just like walking out of the theater with just like a warm feeling like they did everything right. You know, I had no complaints. And, I had like, there was stuff that I was watching, was like, "Well, that wasn't in the original story," but, afterwards, I was like, "I don't care." Everything was great. I love the effects. I love the battle scenes. They were so much fun. The characters were all great. It was the 4 kids. It was the wardrobe. It was everything. It was just like I think it was the first time, like, because most of the time whenever there's an adaptation, there's always somebody who has a problem with it, like, "Oh, that wasn't great," or "That wasn't" like, even my sister who loves Lord of the Rings, Nicole, she does not care for, the Two Towers or Return of the King because they changed too much. I just didn't have that problem coming out of this movie. I felt like they did everything as well as they could, and I just really, really enjoyed it. I'm looking forward to seeing what the director of the Barbie movie is doing with the next Chronicles of Narnia movie that's in development. She's writing and directing it, I believe. So I'm looking forward to
Wow.
that. But this movie, it was the perfect time because now I'm never surprised when a movie's coming out. The trailer's never surprised. I always see it well in advance or hear news about it well before. And this was just that movie that really changed me in a way that it gave me everything I want. And now, like, I know almost everything about a movie before going into it because of trailers.
Yeah, I will say that was one that was very impactful as far as I was blown away at the the cinematography, the way that it brought you into the world. I got excited, honestly, to do fantasy films. I was like, if I'm ever a director, I
Mhm.
want to do one like this. I honestly was, I was inspired. I was inspired, like to the point of I was just like, whatever they did to make the lighting look like that, I want to copy it and create my own characters within that.
Mhm.
So yeah, it really definitely did impact me as well. So moving on to my next choice, this is a film a lot of people didn't see. Like 250 people probably saw it at a theater, and that's about it. It's a Christian film, but its quality is good. It's called Revelation.
Revelation.
Now,
Yeah.
Kenneth, I'm hoping you can put together a clip package to show people. This film, of course, was a film about the end times. What could happen
Mhm.
when government takes over and the Antichrist is in place, which, if you guys don't know, is the devil, the beast. He's basically taking over, and he's got time to take over and rule on the earth. Now, this is from the Bible, and they made a film based on that. And the actors they got were very believable, and to the point where the scenarios were very believable about, let's just say, father putting his son in prison just because he had a Bible. And in this time in this film, they're illegal, and he puts his own son in prison. And uh, keep in mind, it's not police that are keeping these people in jail. It's the followers of the Antichrist that are doing the work. It's their henchmen that are they're basically keeping all the Christians who are getting arrested and stuff in these cells until they figure out what they're going to do with them. So as a kid watching this, I was super hyper aware. Let me tell you, to the point where it changed me. So I don't know, within the next day or so, I started digging a hole. I started mapping a plan. I said to
Yeah.
myself, if they're coming for me, I'm getting prepared. Me and my friend started digging a 6.5-foot hole. When we realized it
Yep.
was going to be very hard to get out, we realized we had to go sideways. My dad tried to put a stop to this. He said, "You guys
Well,
are going to
yeah.
kill yourself and engulf yourself." We had help. Like, um, my brother-in-law at the time, he was helping us dig this thing. Uh, at the time, maybe my friend thought, "Oh yeah, this is just for fun." No, I was trying to get aware, us prepared and aware that this could happen, and we were going to have a hiding place. so I don't get to jail and I don't get thrown in the fiery furnace. So Revelation changed my
Chris,
life.
your hiding place was like 30 feet away from your family farm. You know, it's like if if you're gonna have to go hide somewhere, your hiding place is in a hole about a little bit away from you, or it's like I'm just saying it wasn't the most thought through. They probably look around the woods. But
Nah, they would never find it.
you know what? Cloud 10 Pictures, that was the company that made Revelations, and they actually had a decent amount of, I mean, for Christian movies, let's be honest, Christian movies are not the most well-made movies. A lot of times they're just lower quality. But Cloud 10 had a actually decent amount of movies that really captured our feeling. And I actually really liked what they did with VR in this world. Like, they had this thing where there was, like, a VR headset that they used, and they used, like, you would put it on, and then you'd see the guy who was, the devil, basically, yeah, and, he would offer you the deal if you took his mark, and, some people did and some people didn't. And like some of the people who did were like vulnerable, they were more tempted because he was like there was a guy in a wheelchair and a woman who was blind, and they were a little bit more vulnerable to the temptation because of their situations, and he offered them their sight and healing, their walking back, and they took the deal and stuff like that. And so yeah, I remember this is like I was like, "I would never take that deal. I would never," I was like, so yeah, I remember a lot of stuff about this movie too,
Yeah,
and
the VR kind of reminds me of Ready Player One. Uh, so it was definitely ahead of its time, I guess.
okay, the next one for me, I mean, not all of these movies that we are talking about needs to be necessarily that they impacted your life in a positive way. This movie for me is a movie called Black Death.
Ooh.
This movie Okay, let me just set the scene. When I was a teenager, I think if I had ideas for stories. I never really had like a skill for writing them down, but I would always just get up. I was like, "Oh, this would make a good movie, or this would make a good story." And in my teenage years, I got pretty dark with it. It's like, what if you had a story where this happened and this happened? And it'd all be like really dark, like somebody does something terrible happens to them, and like it was like a superhero origin where his whole family gets killed, or someone gets like taken advantage of and stuff like that. It was really dark stuff, and I thought, I was being pushing the boundaries. I was making adult stories, and then I watched Black Death, and this movie is the darkest thing I've ever seen in my entire life. This movie has a bunch of people during the Plague, and that's not even the darkest part of this. This movie has these guys that are investigating a village to see if they're witches, basically going on a witch hunt for them. This guy is using this, who is like supposed to be a priest, is using this opportunity to run away with the woman he wants to marry, but then he finds out that she dies along the way, and so he thinks she's dead, but then he sees her like brought back to life by these village witches, and so there's a scene where they're like, "Hey, if you renounce Jesus," which as a Christian, that already is like really dark. One guy does renounce Jesus and they kill him. But if you're not Jesus, we'll reunite you with his wife. And so they put him in a house with her, and she's a little like she's not all there. She's like doddering around. She can't recognize him. She's like going all and he's like, "No, this isn't my wife. This is, an abomination. These are witches. They need to be put down," basically. And so he grabs his wife and he like, I don't know if he puts a pillow over her head or he strangles her and he kills her. And then Sean Bean's in this movie, and he dies in the most horrific way. They tie two two ropes to two uh, they tie each limbs to two horses and have the horses go in opposite directions, ripping them apart. Like, that was already disgustingly dark. And then So then he's like, he kills the woman he was going to marry, and he's chasing after the head witch, and then she's like, by the way, she was never dead. I just drugged her. She would have been fine in an hour or two or something like that. You just killed your wife for no reason. And it's like, oh my gosh, that is the worst. That is the absolute worst sort of thing. I can't even imagine. And then she gets away, and the movie ends with showing that this guy basically turns into like a priest who went after witches. But whenever anybody was accused as a witch, he would see those women as that witch that got away. So he would just turn into a terrible person that killed anyone who was ever accused of being a witch.
Ooh.
And I was like, okay, you can have darkness in your stories, but if you're just having darkness for the sake of darkness, what is the point? It was depressing. I was like, this is the sickest thing I've ever seen, but not in a way that made me like, well, at least I understand. Like, a story doesn't need to have a happy ending in order for me to get enjoyment out of it. But everyone was terrible by the end. Every decision that was made, it was like, why did I even watch this? Why did I even put myself through it? It wasn't. And I say, I can you can watch a movie without a happy ending. That's fine, but like, give me something. It
Hmm.
was That was yeah, it left an impact, and I stopped trying to make the darkest story ever in my head because I had seen it and I didn't like it. So, do you remember this one, Chris?
Never saw it. Never will.
Oh, well, then moving on.
My next one is a film came out early on, and everyone's probably seen it. It's called A Beautiful Mind.
I was considering it. Yeah.
Yeah. Mental health was done in a couple films, Girl Interrupted and a number of other ones, but not like this. This made it so that you didn't know the character in the film had a problem. And I like that because it brings you in. It makes you feel like he doesn't think there's anything wrong, but he can see all around him that there's crazy stuff happening. Um,
Spoiler alert for
schizophrenia.
Beautiful Mind.
What's that?
I was gonna say spoiler alert for Beautiful Mind, but no, keep
Oh,
going.
yeah. I was just gonna say, schizophrenia is definitely different than depression, but they can be similar in some ways. Definitely inspired me to make replacement, which I'm still currently filming right now. Um, the the character Nash goes through so much, and throughout his years, he gets older and older, and these things just keep tightening around him. Like um, the voices become clearer, and I'll just say voices because you know exactly if you've seen the film what I'm talking about. But the thing that got me is this film has a way that you could be having the flu and cold and having a cough and cold, and you could put this in, and if you're not falling asleep due to the fact that you're on meds that are helping you get over the cold, if you're awake, you can put this on, and this will motivate you. I don't know how to explain it, but this is an incredible motivator. The scene where Jennifer Connelly is asking him to believe that there's something more, and there's just this triumphant, inspiring message that even though you have all these mental problems and it's clear, you can still overcome them. And the thing of the matter of it is it talks about medication. And my film that I'm working on does too. But he doesn't like to feel Nash doesn't like to feel over medicated, so he gets off them, and then he starts to hear the voices again. Um, but I'm just gonna say there's at a certain point where he wants this, way off the medication. He wants to be able to do the things he can do, but he also doesn't want to have all the voices in his head too. So he has to choose. Is he gonna stay off the medication and fight the voices every which way, all the step of the way, or is he gonna be on the medication and he can just relax, doesn't have to worry about the voices, and he's not really himself. So, and that the film handled this beautiful. And I'll just pass it over to you, Kenneth.
Oh yeah, Beautiful Mind is one of my favorite true story movies because, like, I'm sure mathematicians probably know his story and everything, and probably weren't surprised. But for me, I was buying it. I was buying it every step of the way. And I was like, "Well, yeah, he's just a code breaker and a code guy, he's very, very smart." And so that made the movie change into a completely different type of movie at the midpoint. You're thinking that this is a movie about, a code breaker who's, on the run from like a bunch of, terrorists that are gonna try to do stuff on the home soil. I'm like, wow, he really did this and stuff. And then boom, like a switch, you're like, "Oh, no, this is a story about a brilliant man who's going through some tragedy," and it's like whiplash. You're like, "Oh, oh, none of that what we've seen is right. None of the story that we've seen so far is correct. This is all just in his head." And then, like, the torment to have to go through that to be like, my only friend that I've had my entire life or since college has just been in my head, and, like, the
Mm.
fears and the things that Jennifer Connelly's character has to go through. There's a scene that is just terrifying where the baby is in the bath and the water is slowly filling up, and he just thinks that his friend is looking after the baby, but his friend isn't there, and it's so hard to see that, what he's going through and stuff. And yeah, like, this is without a doubt Russell Crowe's best performance. Like, I would say it's way better than anything he's ever done before or since. It's just the most captivating character of his I've ever seen, and yes, it's one of my favorites for sure. Kaylin hasn't seen it. It's one of our I have it on the library actually to rent as soon as it's available, and I can't wait to watch it with her because I want to see what her reaction to it is.
Hmm.
Okay, next on my list we have The Truman Show. This movie, for a while had me questioning reality. You know, I know it's the ego in me a little bit, but part of me, I used to do this thing, and I really did this. I would look into the bathroom mirror, and I'd go, "I know you're watching. I know. We can all stop playing this little game. I know what's up. Knock it off." Like, I tried to, like, do Truman, but, like, if he was actually talking to them. And, we saw this in the perfect way because Chris and I walked in, at least I remember both of us. Dustin, our brother Dustin, was watching it, and I think Nicole was there and a couple of his friends. And we walked in like right as soon as like the light fell from the sky. And I was like, what? And so, like, we didn't get the setup thing at the beginning where it was like, hey, it's a show, with the little interviews here that tips off the audience. And so I was like, what? What is happening? And as the film slowly unveiled it, we understood it more and everything, and it was just like so perfect. And then we were talking about it with my our brother, and we were just talking about the significance and what it would be like. And I just remember getting so much wrapped up in what would it be like for you when you were in there. And we were talking about it so much, we were like, why don't we just watch it again? And we did. And I'd have never in my entire life, except for maybe when I was a little kid, watched a movie 2 times in a row. I was like, yeah, let's watch it again. Let's do it again." And it it was like a whole new film watching it with the
Mm.
understanding eyes from the very beginning, and I just it's always been one of my favorites, top 5, favorite films. It's Jim Carrey's performance of a man who's trying to understand his reality and what's happening to him and struggling with that, and I like how he's just so good. It's really it's one of my favorite performances of all time. He should have been nominated. Uh, he should have won. It's just yeah, I don't even have any more words. The Truman Show, it just got I don't think there's ever been a movie that has made me think more about my world and everything else. So, yeah, that's why Truman Show is definitely one for me.
Yeah, it definitely. It had me wondering. Not necessarily like, am I? Is everything real? It just had me enough wonder, like, what would happen, and it got me sucked into that world. And man, I think the thing that got me was Truman was always trying to go somewhere. Like, because of his
Mm,
character, his longing to be a traveler. Boy, well, he's wanting to see new things. He's as a kid, he
mhm,
wants to explore. Um, so he's more or less an explorer slash traveler, and it got me too. I was thinking, yeah, how often have I felt that way too, being cooped up on a farm, never gonna get to go anywhere, only going places that my parents take me, feeling like I really can't really do much. I feel kind of closed in, and it's a weird concept. People in the city feel they're closed in. People in the country also feel they're closed in because they can't go anywhere. They're just on the farm. There's no friends to go over to. There's no one to talk to. You have to wait for either the weekend or something. So
people
that
in the
part.
city feel claustrophobic, people on the farm feel trapped.
Oh yeah, good point. Yeah, that's exactly what I meant. Anyways, yeah, definitely stuck with me, and I still just remember so many scenes. Like, is that the best you can do? You're gonna have to kill me. Oh my goodness! Like,
Mm.
the man is willing to go through whatever it takes just to escape. Yeah, that's definitely one for that I came in the same time. Didn't even get it. I thought it was a spotlight, but I couldn't be sure. Didn't know why it fell. It was really confusing. Anyways, so my next film is a film that you wouldn't think would be very influential. You would think it was just another superhero film. And for the most part, it is just another superhero film. Very well done. People thought it was going to be a flop. They didn't know the next two would be a flop. I'm talking about X-Men Days of Future Past. Now,
Really?
this one has an emotional connection
Mhm.
with one character in particular. I think everyone knows his name, Xavier. They did something different. They held on his recovery. And when I say his recovery, he has to recover to get his powers back.
Yeah.
I didn't think that would resonate when I was watching it. I was thinking, wow, this is pretty powerful stuff. This is making me feel kind of like all weird inside. And then he has to give up. He has to give up in order to um, better himself. He's destroying himself. He's just relying on these drugs, so he can have a piece of himself back. But it's a piece that isn't doesn't matter. He can't. He's just a body. he's not a mutant anymore, basically, because a mutant has powers.
Mm.
He doesn't have powers.
He's denied a part of himself.
So, and it was something like I saw it on, maybe I saw it like on a Friday, and then Sunday came along, and I was having an anxiety attack, and I realized what was spiking the attack had to do with my sugar level. And there I was with a medium-sized Dr. Pepper, and I remember I was thinking back to that scene where Charles had to give up the drugs so that he could have his powers back again. And I decided I'm not going to have another Dr. Pepper after that. I didn't even finish it. I poured it out and I walked away from having a Dr. Pepper a day. I don't have pop a day. I have it usually like a Saturday, and then Sunday comes and I don't have a pop. I used to be a heavy pop drinker, and I know you guys are thinking that's not a big sacrifice, but for some people it was. So it did change my life as far as drinking soda goes, and realizing that I was being spiked by too much sugar.
Yeah. Days of Future Past. It's my favorite X-Men film. I recently, well, not recently, but I did a ranking where I went through every single X-Men film and I rewatched it all, every single one that they made, and I confidently put Days of Future Past as number one, just because not only is the action fun, not only does it have some of the best moments for these characters in the whole franchise, but I felt like there was no ego involved with any of these actors. Halle Berry comes back as Storm for, like, she barely has any lines. She just has a few fight scenes and that's it. And everybody came back because I felt like they really cared about the characters, and there was a really very strong story behind it. Every character's motivations I understood. There was some of the best moments, like with the Quicksilver scene. It was just all around. I think it's the strongest, even higher than Logan. I say Logan is the best dramatic this part that the franchise has been, but I think Days of Future Past is the best X-Men movie, period, that truly captures what the X-Men are all about. And yeah, as you said, there's definitely a lot of, like, parallels and stuff to real life world, as the X-Men often do, and yeah, it's a really good, really great movie. Alright, the next one from my list, I have The Passion of the Christ. This one, it's more of a because of my faith that it really, really hit home and really influenced me. And there are a lot of critics of Passion of the Christ. There's a lot of people who talk about how, oh, it's just a gore fest. Oh, it's just a, disgusting type of movie. He's totally indulgent on all these gory stuff. And I can understand where people are coming from that regard. But you got to know where I'm coming from as a Christian. Every movie that we'd ever seen about Jesus was tame. You know, they'd always show here, yeah, he's definitely they're getting the nails hammered in. We definitely is happening. You don't see it. Oh, he got whipped. You don't really see it. This movie, when I was watching it, made me sick. Like, I was to my core. I didn't fully realize, and maybe it's indulgent, maybe it's a little too much, but it felt real when I was watching it. I've never had a time where I felt like I was right there, watching it happen. Like there used to be this thing we would listen to, as kids called Adventures in Odyssey, and there was different things that you could they had this thing in there called the Imagination Station where they would go in there and they'd relive a Bible story, and they'd be able to take part in it, and the kids would, watch it happen, and this was what I felt I was in. I was sitting there watching it happen, and it just felt so real to me. uh like, the outside world wasn't real at that moment. Everything that was happening there was was real, and it was dark, and it was hard to watch, and the moments felt so impactful, like, when we actually see the nail going in his hand and you can see the bones breaking, and that is just, like, it really left an emotional impact on me. For a while, I used to do this thing where every Good Friday I would watch The Passion of the Christ, and I haven't kept that up, but even after, it always hit emotionally with me and made me truly grateful of the thing that Jesus had to do in order for us to be saved.
Hmm. Yeah, we'll add um, such a amazing, uh, amazing turn of events that led that to be made. Um, like I just find it so remarkable that someone like Mel Gibson, who was a great big Hollywood actor, directed a few films, and then decided to do this one, and it's just amazing. I will talk about my next one, um, The Breakfast Club.
Oh,
The
very good
Breakfast
pick.
Club was a film that got to take the time because a lot of films rush these days, especially when it talks about films that are generally about youth. I feel like they're really hyped up, and we get emotional scenes, but they just seem like we don't get down to the what's really going on. And that's the thing. Breakfast Club gets down to what's really going on. And when it does that, it opens up an opportunity that I feel like sharing too, because it's like all these kids are sharing their problems some way or the other, and I feel included in that. I felt like the character I resonated the most with was obviously, is his name Brian? The
Yeah,
kid that the brain.
yeah, that was the joke. Brain is Brian.
Yeah. Um, I felt like I connected with him the most. Felt very much like a nerd in my school. Was only in school for kindergarten, grade 1, and grade 2. Didn't complete grade 2. Got pulled out and was a homeschooler after
Yeah, you
that.
definitely weren't the nerd in the homeschool. That was me.
Yeah, I was the bully of the homeschooling, so I
Yeah,
guess
yeah,
I,
you were
I
the
turned
bender.
I turned into a bender. So, anyways, yeah. So, uh, there's been films that have tried to do this over the years. Haven't been as successful. Everyone knows John Hughes wrote this, and in some ways, he didn't think it was going to be big at all. But over the years, it got to be pretty big to the point where I still have a Breakfast Club hoodie. Um, and just the fact that by the end of the film, it's saying more than just it's saying more than just oh yeah, we're finding boyfriend and girlfriend. There's a few that hook up, but it's saying more than that. It's saying we're going to be here next Saturday, and the Saturday after that, and the Saturday after that, and the Saturday after that, and you can't do a thing about it because we're all here for each other. And that is a huge and powerful message. And even every character has some sort of an arc, where they either come out of their shell or they have hope again. That fist
Mm.
in the end of the film is hope. That's the thing. He didn't have hope, and he would blame everyone else and put all his frustration and anger on everyone else. But when he put his fist in the air, that means hope. So yeah, that's why it resonated with me. It still stuck with me after all this time.
Yeah, it's a really great film. I have actually probably seen it, well, not even seen it, heard it a bunch because I used to work for this road crew, and, I had a few movies downloaded on my iPod that I would just put in my pocket next to my ear, and I would just play it, and I would listen to the whole movie, and I only had, like, 3 movies on there. It was this one, it was Chronicle, and it was the Pixar Story, the documentary. So, there was the only movies I did, and so I would listen to it a lot and hear the story a lot, and I've it's really, really good. The acting all around is good. I feel like the emotions are good. I feel like a lot of movies want to get to the points that this movie does, but they don't take the time to develop to get to those points. Like, they'll just have characters blur, like, "I almost killed myself," or something like that, and
Yeah,
it's just like, why would the character say that? Why would they do that? Where this it all led up, perfectly led up to these movies, because these characters don't just get along from the start, they have conflict, and then they have moments where some will get along, they'll have moments where the others will get along, and they'll have moments where the others everyone's at odds with each other at the moment, and it just plays the school, but then the teacher comes in and they all have a common enemy against the teacher. They're all yelling at Bender to stop doing crap, and then the teacher comes in and says, "Who's doing crap?" Nobody says, "Oh, it was Bender." They're like, "No, because the teacher, the adults are the enemy. They're all still together just because they're still kids." Yeah, it's a really great movie. Definitely my favorite of John Hughes. Absolutely fantastic all around. The number one movie that influenced my life is The Dark Knight, and I think this has to be number 1 because I wouldn't have this channel if it wasn't for this movie.
hmm,
Because when The Dark Knight came out, it was my favorite movie. I watched it over and over again. I saw it in theaters 2, maybe 3 times. I, but then since I loved it so much and it was my new favorite movie, which, something that hadn't happened in a long time in my life to have something just jump to the number 1 spot, I wanted to hear everybody's opinion on it. I wanted to hear everybody heap praises onto this movie. So what did I start doing? I listened to movie reviews. I watched review after review after review over and over and over again. I watched the Ebert and Michael Scott from the Chicago Tribune. No, sometimes. Anyway, they had uh, a bunch of different reviews, and I would just watch them over and over again because I wanted to hear people talk about how great Heath Ledger was and how good Aaron Eckhart was, and make fun of the Christian Bale Batman voice. I wanted to hear all of that, so I would just listen to all of these reviews over and over, and eventually it led me to wanting to do reviews of my own. I wanted to get into that. Like I enjoyed the craft so much that I wanted to get into it because it led me to like I always had watched reviews before. I was into Siskel and Ebert and Ebert and Roper, but that was about it. This one expanded my horizons. This is how I met. This is how I saw stuff like the Nostalgia Critic for the first time because it recommended me the Batman and Robin review of his, and that got me onto all of that, and that also helped as well. But it was started the spark that started it all was The Dark Knight and it being my favorite movie, and it just everything about it is so great. The acting from all of the characters, the amazing writing, the flippin' stakes that had never been higher, the things that it did that no super movie at the time ever dared to do. Like at the time, spoilers, I guess, but when the bombs blew and Rachel died, had as far as I know, no other superhero movie had ever killed off the love interest like that, and I
hmm.
was in shock. I was dumbfounded, and especially because my mind was playing off how the scene works. So, like, well, Harvey Dent's got to become Two Face, so he'll save Rachel. The bombs will go off, and he'll become Two Face because of the bombs. And then when he opens the door, and there's Harvey on the floor, and my mind just went, "He switched them. Of course he did. He switched them." And I'm like, "But then boom." and it was like, holy crap. Yeah, everything about The Dark Knight is just amazing, spectacular. It's my favorite movie still, and yeah, that's all I gotta say.
And can I just say, I don't hate me for this, but I enjoy Batman Begins more.
I know you do. We did the
And
Batman movie bash. Don't think I remember that? Of course you do.
yeah, but anyways, it's definitely up there. It's got the characters you want, and even though it was dark, it doesn't have a happy ending necessarily. Um, I think that it's definitely up there. It's one of the most biggest films ever made,
Mm.
and done such a great job. And I I've already said in the other review, but I'll say it again. Like, remember, I saw the trailer 6 months before it came out. I was planning everything around this, and not to say that you should get your hopes up and then be underwhelmed or anything. Just getting your hopes up isn't a bad thing. The trailer did its job then, and having a trailer doesn't mean that the whole movies is going to be good and the trailer's good. Sometimes the trailer's good and the movie's bad, but I'm not saying it's bad at all. I'm just saying I was hyped for it just like everyone else was, and it was definitely up there for being the biggest blockbuster I've ever seen. And it was interesting when I saw this in theaters. I was in Hawaii, and the day, either that day or the day before, I was on a film set. And when I when I started watching a few of the scenes, my eyes were going to, oh, there's where the light is. There's where, they're
Mm.
casting a shadow. There's where, the person standing. I'm just picturing it all on like a film set. And so they shouldn't have had me on a film set before I saw this. It really threw me off. um,
Maybe you should rewatch it. But
yeah, for the fifth time. Um, so the Passion of the Christ is my
number one.
next one. I didn't say anything
Yeah,
before,
I
but
figured.
now I'm talking about it. Of course, it had to be my number one, um, because of my faith and the fact that when I looked at the poster as I was going into the movie theater, I was just like, person on that cover, even though he looks beaten, he looks like a warrior. And when I saw the movie, we know that Jesus obviously goes through everything and dies um, for our sins, and it just is the one movie. I can't think of any movie that was goes through horrific scenes, painful, but at the end, I had hope. That last scene in the film where we see Jesus walking from the tomb, getting up and walking from the tomb, that's hope. And I feel like I'm repeating myself because my last film was talking about hope. Uh, but no, I don't know the effect. It's a spiritual thing. I can't even put it into words. It is a spiritual thing that happens when I watch this. It's like scriptures are manifested, and I know they didn't necessarily get everything to 100%. There's a few things I still wonder about, but those that are accurate to the scriptures are as if it's happening in front of you. And me and my wife have I think we've seen this 3 times, 3 or 2 times, I can't remember. Each time we cry. Um, it's an emotional thing, you know. Our spirit is grieved, but we know there's hope. It's like it's hard to explain. It's like you got to go through the pain to get to
Mm.
the hope and the joy. And I've often gone through watching this, and I'm just like, I'm just rooting for the character. Um, I'm rooting for Jesus to complete his mission, and knowing that it's like when he's just about getting up on the cross, I keep saying in my head, "You're almost there." And yeah, I know a lot of people that aren't Christians that have seen this, and I like to talk to them about that and ask them, so how did that impact your life? You know, and I don't necessarily think it's witnessing. I think it's just trying to know what impacted their lives, and this had to be my number one for being the most impactful films, because it is what I believe in, it is what I choose to walk in. Yeah, I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for Jesus, and I wouldn't be able to make any of my movies if it wasn't for him. He's the only way it's possible. I know that's hard to believe, but trust me, when you trust in the Lord, He'll provide.
Nice. Sorry, I just have to let my dog in because she's scratching. Uh, this is yeah, this is the movies that have changed us over the years, and I'm sure there's going to be a lot more in the future that have affect us because as people we're ever changing, ever growing, and so I want to thank everyone for watching. Maybe put in the comments below what movies affected you, what movies changed you as a person, or changed your worldview, or got you really thinking about different things. It doesn't even matter if we agree with it. It could be something that's like, completely different from what I just want to see. What are the movies that affected you and changed you? Let me know in the comments below. Thank you for watching. Until next time, I'm Lazy Dude.
And I'm Chrisfilmbaker.
And yeah, God bless. Bye.
Bye.